Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Pastor Mike with New Hope Network. We're here to help you take your next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're with us today.
What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to the Grow Podcast. My name is David. I'm very glad that you're here with me as always. Pastor Mike. Hello, Pastor Mike.
Hello, David.
Episode 99.
99.
As we learned on last week's podcast, do you remember the athlete who wore that number that we talked about?
Nope.
Greatest hockey player of all time?
Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky. Good
Yes.
job. Now, would you like to spell Wayne Gretzky's
No.
name for us?
Nope.
That's probably the right move.
Yep.
That's probably the right move. It's episode 99.
It is. You
We're
know what
almost-
that means?
No?
Next week is 100.
Wow. You are
math.
nothing if not good at math. I have
I've heard.
Oh,
Go ahead.
No, please.
I heard a rumor we're doing something for episode.
We
100.
will be doing something fun for episode 100.
Okay.
So that'll be. Make sure you join us next week. Make sure you subscribe. Ooh, good pro transition here.
That's good.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss episode 100 next week.
Smash that like button.
Smash the like button. Jump into the comments. Make sure you But for real, do those things. It does help us. When you either leave a review on, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, or if you like the videos on YouTube, it does help other people find the videos easier, things like that. So definitely do those things, and do leave a comment, because we would love to hear your feedback, hear your thoughts. In fact, I'm going to ask for comments this week. Just before we started recording, well, technically the cameras were rolling, but before we officially started the podcast, we were just talking about cars.
Sure.
I would like everybody listening, and I mean everybody. There are hundreds of you that listen to the Grow Podcast. I want every single one of you to go to YouTube, into the comments of this video, and let us know what car you think fits the personality of Pastor Mike. That is
in a completely different direction than what we were talking.
We were talking about old cars,
we were
favorite
talking
cars.
about our favorite cars,
Nope,
our least favorite cars.
I want to hear think about the Pixar movie Cars, right? And their personalities match the type of car. If Pastor Mike was in the movie Cars, what vehicle would he be? Michael, our producer, Michael is in the room. What personality car do you think it would be for Pastor Mike?
So before we do this, we're going to talk about how not to be offended.
Oh, yeah. In fact, we have up that podcast already. Yeah. We'll link to it right here. And they might all say Wonder Woman.
You have a very
Michael has a really evil smirk on his face.
Smile on your face. You don't want to say it.
I wish we had a camera. What is it?
Model T.
A Model T. Michael says a Model T. Because you're an originator. You're at the forefront.
That's
of
probably
things.
not what he's thinking.
I'm assuming that's what he meant. Michael says a Model T.
That was evil. That was mean.
I was hoping he would say Chevette, just because you were talking the first car you ever purchased, not your first car.
Now you're biasing people.
The first car. No, because they're not going to steal our answers unless they all had already typed Model T in and wrote it before Michael answered Model T. What car do you think fits your personality, Pastor Mike?
Never given it thought.
Right.
I'm going to have to give that thought.
What about if you had to pick one for me, what would it be? Keep in mind, I'm not the one who said
Pontiac
Model
Grand
T.
Am.
Yeah, just.
Well, that was part of our earlier
we talked about
conversation,
how every single kid in high school
Yeah.
when I was growing up, that was the
Michael
car
is
they
a
all
pickup.
drove.
No question.
Michael's definitely like an old pickup.
Yeah.
Like an old reliable pickup, no power windows, no power steering, but the thing will always start. Yep, that's Michael. That's the perfect one for Michael.
Yeah, I need to think about yours for a while.
I'm okay if you just answer Michael's, but I want I would love it. I would love to accumulate all of these answers and discuss them with you. So please jump into the chat and let us know what car Pastor Mike is. And if you want to let us know your first car too, because that's how this all came up.
Yep.
Your first car was what?
My first car I drove was a Datsun pickup.
Datsun
1972, I believe, Datsun pickup. First car I owned was a Chevy Chevette.
Yeah. And for me, it was a Geo Prism. Beautiful shade of green. And what was Michael's thing? He had a pickup truck?
Pickup.
Was that your first one?
No, it was the Buick.
Oh, Oldsmobile.
Buick Delta 88. Was that what it was?
So let us know the first car you drove, but more importantly, let us know what car is Pastor Mike's personality, because I'm going to have a really good time this following week if everybody does that. So yes, jump into the comments and let us know that. We would love to hear that. It's interestingly, it's kind of a time where a lot of people are getting like their first cars. A lot of people get them as like graduation gifts.
My parents did not do that.
No,
but yeah,
mine did not either.
Yeah.
But I was driving a car that I didn't buy at the
Right.
time, so
I
I'm
was
not really
too.
going to complain
Probably
about
the
it.
Datsun pickup. But
Mine was the GeoPrism.
yeah,
I loved that thing, man. No power anything.
are you having
needs-
a moment here?
Who needs power anything when you have a
All of my first
GeoPrism?
cars were stick shifts, and I miss driving
Oh.
a car with a good.
My first year of college, I had a friend who had a stick shift, and he taught me how. And I have not driven one since, and I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would remember.
My children don't know how.
Yeah, I did.
I've never had opportunity to
At
teach
this point, like
Kylie and I both.
unless
'cause
you're
we
a
both grew
race car driver, like
up.
why?
It's a great way to drive a
It's
car.
So exhausting. You have to actually do
Are you
something
with me,
while you
Michael?
drive.
No, really.
Farmer Michael not on board. See,
Yeah.
the pickup truck I pictured him as was a
Was it
stick
automatic?
shift.
It's a stick. Your
The one you
pickup.
owned. The
Really?
one he owned was automatic, but I'm saying the
Wow.
one he is
Oh,
a
yeah.
stick shift.
Yeah,
He's
absolutely.
yeah, an old like a 19
Classic.
like 84. No, not like the super old classics because he's not old enough. 78 Dodge. You can be a 78 Dodge. Okay, there you go.
There you go.
But yeah, it's that time of year right now.
is.
Your kids are all
Graduation
old
time.
and done doing those things now. Well, not for
we actually
college.
have 2 more graduations coming up. One next
Yeah,
December and
for
one the
college
December
graduations.
after. And then I'm done with helping with college.
Are you
grads.
are you a college grad party person, or is are grad parties only for high school?
Like invite everybody
Yeah.
over? No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, we'll go do something.
Sure, you do something. Yeah, absolutely. Celebrate. But
Yeah.
not like the open house.
No.
Have everybody come over and eat
No.
bars.
Part of it is, we aren't on campus with them, so we know some of their friends, but they want to go out and party and hang out with all their friends. So we don't, it's like go to wherever you go and do that, and then we'll do something. We try to do something to celebrate.
Yeah. Well, we're in our series Celebrate right now.
Yes. Last week we celebrated moms.
We did celebrate moms, and this week we celebrated the youngsters.
Youngsters, but it was a message for everybody.
It was, as was the one for moms too. That was, I think, obviously it's something you're intentional about.
Yep.
It's Mother's Day, so if you are not currently a mother, you can go ahead and check out of
Just
this
check
message.
out. Fall asleep.
There's certainly things that relate to everybody, but we're going to talk. There's a lot of change going on, so we're going to talk about change and how to deal with such things, because change is so easy for everybody to deal with all the time.
We're actually going to celebrate change
Ooh.
on the weekend, Memorial Day weekend, for teaching. But today we're going to talk about finding stability when change happens.
How do we do that? You have 2 minutes.
You just decide.
All right. Well, this has
done.
been a great week. Thank
Yeah.
you for joining us on the Grow Podcast.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week for episode 100.
It's actually based on a lesson that I did
Just decide.
some time ago. Yeah.
I want you.
Yeah, just decide.
Okay.
Just
You're,
decide.
you're not
Be
here that
stable.
much longer, but can you please preach a message where you just go up and you're like, this is the thing we're going to talk about today. Just do it better. And then just walk off stage. You can come back and give the actual message.
Okay,
but
I'm
I really
dating
want that to
myself,
happen.
but I'm betting you've seen this. Bob Newhart,
Okay.
the old
I'm
Bob
familiar,
Newhart
I'm familiar
comedy
with Bob
show.
Newhart.
That you can look it up on YouTube. When he's the psychologist, when he's the counselor, there's a clip where he just looks at the person and says, "Stop
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yes. I have.
Stop it."
Yes.
It's
brilliant.
the best, maybe the best clip of all time. You know,
It is absolutely brilliant.
and there's been so many times I just want to get up and say, "Okay, stop it." All right, we're done. We're done.
Man, if we had more
Grow
time,
podcast.
we should have done
Here
a
we go.
series called Stop
Stop
It, where you just go up and do that.
Stop doing these things. We're going to talk about starting doing some things or making sure you're doing things.
Probably a better way to do it.
Discover how to be spiritually healthy in an unhealthy world. 5 habits to stabilize your life. And it's out of one of the, there's not a great book in the Bible, but there are some books that we go to far more often.
List the non-great books in the Bible for us real quick, Pastor Mike.
Numbers, Lamentations are right up there.
I don't know. You just preached out of
I did,
those
but
a little bit, and they were pretty
They
good.
aren't fun to read sometimes.
That's fair. That's fair.
Philippians.
That's a good one.
Philippians.
That is a good
I
one.
like Philippians.
One of my favorite small group studies I was ever a part
Really?
of when we were still in Minnesota. We did a study on Philippians, and it was one of my favorites ever.
So much of Philippians talks about how to live through, survive through, thrive in circumstances that aren't easy. And when you understand the background of where and when Paul wrote it, I mean, he's sitting in jail, didn't know if he was going to die any day, didn't know if he was going to get out. And yet you don't find any whining and complaining in there at all. It's like, now here's how you choose how to have a best life. And you're like, but you're chained up, Actually, he was under house arrest, but you can't get out. You don't have freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes this amazing thing. When you look at like chapter 1, he talks about how joy should be normal if you're a follower of Jesus in any circumstance. You're going, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Chapter 2, he talks about what relationships, healthy relationships should look like, and how to have gratitude and contentment in those things. In chapter 3, and this is where I want to kind of unpack for us today, is stability when everything else around you is unstable can be normal if you're a follower of Jesus. And we live in an unstable, we have always had an unstable world since the garden, but it's getting increasingly unstable. And we've talked about that a few weeks ago when we looked at Revelation. But as a follower of Jesus, you don't have to live with instability.
Mm-hmm.
You can live with security and stability,
Yeah.
and it's really as possible.
And I think this will be a really relatable message for all of us as part of the New Hope family as well, as we're going through a change as you're leaving. And, it's such a weird thing when the pastor, the senior pastor of a church leaves, and you're, okay, like who's going to lead us now, and what's going to be different, and what's going to change. And it's just, it can be a scary time, especially, it's funny. You even in your, well, hold on. We just recorded all your messages. The hymn thing.
Oh,
was that from week? Have they heard that yet?
No, they haven't heard that yet. That's coming up Memorial Day weekend.
In your next message, you talk about, I don't want to spoil it because it's a fantastic bit, but you talk about like everything in my life, is changing and going crazy. Can church just be the one thing that stays the same? And even though that might not be the right mindset, it's a mindset a lot of us have. Like, this should be a safe place where I go and I'm not,
Things never change.
Yeah, like nothing's hard.
And here's part of, just practically speaking, here's part of the problem with that. I don't want it to change from when I had my most spiritual, most significant spiritual experience. And you don't want it to change from when you had your, what if those aren't the same time?
Yep.
Then we both don't want it to change, and we're all stuck.
Yeah.
But I think times of transition, like what's happening in the life of New Hope and things like that, they remind us, just like the pandemic reminded us of some things. We've talked so much negatively about some things, but God was still at work in some amazing ways. But it reminds us and reveals to us, like that, I got 2 R's in.
Shocking.
Of just where our faith and where we're finding our stability and our source from. Are we finding it in the person? And sometimes, we look to a person for leadership, but is it about the person or is it about my God?
Mm-hmm.
And the people in our life will change from time to time.
Yeah.
And let God do the changing, not you do the changing, because it's so much healthier.
Yeah.
When he does that.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into that. You said you have 5
habits, I think, if my number's right.
Well, we discussed how good you were at math earlier when you knew we were 1 away from 100. So
we'll see.
Can you count to 5?
Yeah. Habit number 1, and these are all from the book of Philippians.
Yep.
So habit number 1, or Philippians 3, if you want to grab your Bible and turn there. Celebrate that I'm forgiven. This is where Paul says, for we who worship by the Spirit of God are the ones who are truly circumcised. And he's talking about, so he's using this Old Testament analogy that was given to Abraham as part of the promise and symbol of being part of the family. Now in the New Testament, he's talking about how it's the circumcision of our hearts. In other words, God comes in and marks us, fills us from the inside. So we rely on what Christ Jesus has done for us, and we put no confidence in human effort. So basically, we have to remind ourselves, if we want to stabilize our life, we have to remind ourselves that we aren't people who have to earn our way and earn God's attention. And I think if you want to find stability, you've got to start by pushing against that. This part of when we go back to the Old Testament, one of the, and we still struggle with, one of the reasons that God instituted the habit of the Sabbath is because in this sin-infected world, we so often identify our success by our accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And that makes us unstable.
Yeah.
Because we'll never accomplish enough.
Yep.
And so when we begin first habit saying, I am valued. Jesus died on the cross, the Bible tells us, even while I was still a sinner. Yeah. And he offered it to me for free. And so daily habit, just pause and pray and celebrate what God has already done. Part of this is just reminding yourself, I'm not, although things I do can be defined by the world as a religion, I'm not following a religion. I'm in a relationship.
Yeah.
A religion asks, what do I need to do for God to make God happy with me? A relationship is, God already loves me. And so what do we get to do together? Mm-hmm. And some of that is we get to help me change, but he's in it with me and I'm in it with him. Yep. So if you, again, that first habit of stability, and this one we struggle with, we actually talked about it on Mother's Day too. One of the greatest lies is, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Men and women struggle with that.
I think that one's big for like finding our identity in Christ as well. Like I'm, if my identity is in what I do, which again is so natural for us, especially in the United States, but it's not unique to us, nor is it unique to this time, but it's really strong right now. If my identity is in what I do or my accomplishments, like you were saying, I'm gonna really struggle with identity because someone will always be better than me. That's a conversation I have with my athletes sometimes as a coach. I'm like, you are always gonna find someone better than you. You're gonna lose. Mm-hmm. And when you lose, if your entire identity is wrapped up in, like for me as a coach, like, okay, I'm David Lundeen, the basketball coach. Yeah. So I need to win, because that's my job as a coach. So when I lose, if that's all I have is my identity, man, I'm going to live my entire life in an identity crisis. And I love, especially the word, what was it in the New Living Translation? I think you read that verse. Yeah. Just, we put no confidence in human effort is such an amazing way to say that. I love
it's
that so
fun
much.
when we accomplish things.
For sure.
But that isn't how I measure my value.
Yep.
But that's how the world measures my value.
Yep.
If I'm not worth my paycheck, then I'm not worth anything. Yeah. I'm not talking about a lack of work ethic and all those kinds of things.
For sure. Definitely.
I'm talking about intrinsic value. If you want to live stable, you've got to understand where your value of who you are comes from.
Okay, habit number 2.
Habit number 2, rehearse what matters most. There's actually a book, and I haven't finished it yet. He's a speaker at GLS, and I think he's actually going to, is he going to be a speaker this year? John Acuff wrote a book, Soundtracks.
He was fantastic. I think he was my favorite speaker at this last one.
So, and he talked, so there's 2 great books out on this right now. One by Craig Rochelle.
About soundtracks as well.
And one, John Acuff. Is it Soundtracks? Is that the title of it?
Yeah.
And he just talks about, talks about the soundtracks that are playing in your head. And this just uses so much of our language. But what are the things you repeat to yourself about what matters most? And Scripture's all over this. Philippians 3 says, all the things that I once thought were so important to me, I now consider worth nothing because of Christ. So part of this, and it's each one of these builds on the other one. So I start with, here's where my value is, okay? And then I go to, what's going to really matter today? What's really going to matter today? So I need to remind myself in the morning what's going to matter and what's not going to matter. Mm-hmm. I've got a friend of mine. He was actually we planted a church together in Sacramento. He carries a compass around in his pocket because he went through a number of years. I was just on the phone with him the other day. He said he went for a number of years, even as a pastor, where he lost his sense of direction because he started measuring himself by things that don't matter. So every day he holds that compass and he says, "All right, God, what direction is my life going to point?" And sometimes we just need those kinds of reminders, different kinds of things. Yeah. And you think about it. It's the small irritations that reveal what we think matters. You're driving and someone cuts you off. And you get so upset, you've got to drive ahead of them, and do all these things. Why does that matter? So I get to the office a couple of minutes, so the person is rude. You don't know their story. Yep. So this just sets your attitude for the day. Rehearse what matters most. And for me, there's those things. For me, not because I'm a pastor, but because I'm a follower of Jesus, what matters most for me is, will everyone I run into today who doesn't know Jesus somehow have an opportunity to be exposed, if they find out who I am, exposed to a little bit of who Jesus is and not who I am? Well, then I'm not going to cut them off on the road. You know, doesn't mean I'm not honest. Doesn't mean I don't get angry. We talked about that before. Yeah. But, so I rehearse what matters most. What's going to matter most to me today? And that leads well into the next habit. So let's jump into habit number 3. Spend time with Jesus. And we go, well, why didn't you start there? Well, I think that's a good point, actually. Sometimes we skip this Pastor one. Mike, you're not supposed to argue with yourself while you're teaching, but you make a good point. Sometimes we skip this one because we haven't done the other 2. Sure. It's like, well, it's because it's so easy to skip because the world doesn't fall apart right away when we skip it. Yeah. If I don't make like when kids are small, if I don't make lunches for my kids, the world falls apart. So
Yeah.
I'll skip my time with Jesus because we got up late, and so I need to make lunch with my kids. But the problem is it messes with everything else. And it sounds so trite, but you've got to spend time just with the one that matters most. It's like we talked about last week. Start at home plate every day. You know, Paul said this: I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his suffering, becoming like him in his death, so that somehow I may be raised to life. For me, spending time with him is him just raising the dead things in me up, the things that I've killed. So every day.
And that's, you go back to habit number 1. Like, because you said sometimes we skip this one if we don't have the well, it's hard to do number 1, celebrate that I'm forgiven, and then still skip the spend time with you, right? Like, if I'm intentional about, okay, I'm going to celebrate that I'm forgiven. Well, why am I forgiven? Well, it's because of Jesus, and I can spend time with him today, and it's going to become easier to do that one. And then again, rehearsing what matters most. Well, habit number 3 is one of the things that matters most. So look at that. It's like you put these in order on purpose.
Well, it's like Paul put them in order. You know, it's amazing that way. You know,
look at maybe that guy was pretty smart. I don't know. Who knows?
Maybe.
We just did 2 full podcasts on him a few weeks back. Oh. So all right, we're on habit number 4 now. Pastor
4,
Mike.
Review where I need to grow. And this is important.
Like this one. I want to skip this
This is important for a lot of reasons, because one of the things that we do, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is we begin to beat ourselves up for where we aren't good enough. Okay.
Yep.
Instead of, and this is one of the soundtracks. So, using John's terms, Craig Rochelle talks about, what's the name of the book? Where he talks about the importance, the importance he has, the importance of how you think about things. Same kind of thing. I mean, it's just a scriptural principle, and most of it's based in Philippians, by the way, where we need to change how we think. Like John Acuff would probably say it this way. He would say, instead of saying, I'm not any good at that, or I'm not good enough for that, it's, oh, I'm not good at that yet. Mm-hmm. See, it's a growth mindset. Right. Oh, man, I screwed that up. Well, okay, I messed up that time. Mm-hmm. Let's work at it for next time. So to remind ourselves and do a daily spiritual, here's where God's working in me right now, and to give myself a little bit of grace. Mm-hmm. And see, one of the reasons we live unstable lives is because we don't give ourselves or other people grace. We're so busy judging and condemning ourselves and other people. And when we live that way, we're building on unstable ground. When we're convinced that we're growing, what do you need to grow? You have a solid foundation. That's where the first 3 come in. Now we're growing on that, saying, okay, I'm building the building. The building's not done yet. I'm building the building so I can move forward. Verse 12 through 13, he says, this is Paul. I don't mean to say I'm perfect. And of course, he wasn't. None of us are. I still haven't learned all I should. And this is Paul. But I keep working. You hear the attitude here? I keep working toward that day when I will finally be all that Christ saved me for and wants me to be. I love that. And he wants me to be. No, dear brothers, I'm still not all that I should be. And this is one of the most amazing verses in the Bible because it's written by a guy who wrote most of the New Testament. He's an older man. He's elderly. He's in prison. He's at the end of his life. He's done incredible things. He's incredibly mature. And yet he says, you know what, I'm still growing. And I want to grow. Mm-hmm. I want to grow. So what can I do to grow? The one thing that, we talk about, that comparison thing. One of the things that makes us unstable, that causes us to live in comparison, is pride. Yeah. And what's the phrase? Pride comes before
the fall.
The fall. Because why? Because we're on unstable ground. We're going to trip. And we need to, even at the beginning of the day, if we can, or at the end of the day, just say, where am I growing? Okay. And it keeps me in that great space where I walk through that.
All right, we're to the last habit, Pastor Mike.
And this actually is a little bit of a repeat of one of the earlier ones, but it's kind of building on it. Let go of what can't be changed and focus on what God is next. So it's building on these last 2. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, okay, I'm rehearsing, I'm reviewing where I need to grow. I'm walking through this, so I'm reviewing or I'm rehearsing what matters most, and I realize there are things, and man, this one's hard for me. Because there are things I want to fix because I'm a fixer. Yep. There are things I want to change. Because I'm also a high justice person. When people do and say things that I know will mess them up or are wrong or whatever, I want to help them. I want to help them go, you are not thinking clearly. Let me help you,
Yep.
kind of thing. But when I'm constantly getting caught up in things that I can't control, I'm building my life on unstable ground. So I need to, and I can only do this after I spent time with Jesus and rehearsed what matters most and reviewed where I need to grow. Then, okay, there are places where I need to grow. There are things that are bugging me. Can I really change that? No. I have a friend who says it this way. He deals with incredibly intense conflict situations every single day. And I asked him, actually, he's going to be filling in speaking at New Hope. So you're going to want to, Pastor Wes Smith. You're going to want to listen to him because he's an amazing teacher. But I asked him how he deals with that. And he said, my job is obedience. God's job is results. And we tend to reverse that.
Yeah.
My job is results, and God then needs to do what I want him to do. And part of this is, like for all of us, you've probably been hurt in your past. Just letting go of one of these things. I love what he says in verse 13. He says, I'm focusing all of my energies on this one thing. Catch this. Forgetting the past. Not that it's not important, but it's not controlling me. And looking forward to what lies ahead. God's growing me. That's why that one comes before this one.
Yeah.
I strain to reach the end of the race and receive the prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us up to heaven. If you want to circle the phrase, focusing all of my energies. You don't have unlimited energy.
Yeah.
That's why you get tired, and that's why you get fatigued. And because you don't have an unlimited supply of energy, put it where it matters most. You can't change certain things. Let God deal with those. Is that easier said than done? Yes. But especially, and that's why these matters, which you walk through the first four, this one becomes much easier.
Sure.
And you'll grow in this. So this might be one of the areas where I need to grow in this.
Yeah.
Grow in this.
Well, growth always starts with a next step, Pastor
There you
Mike.
go.
See how smoothly I snuck that in there, and then I talked about it now, so I ruined how smooth it was. But we do say that every week on the Grow Podcast. Growth always starts with the next step. This was a great next step, joining us for the Grow Podcast. But do you have a good next step for us? So
we talked about the 5 habits.
Yep.
Start, write them down. Where are you at? And maybe start on one this week. Every day I'm going to start with what? I'm going to start with step 1, celebrating that I'm forgiven. Next week I do step 2. And so each week you add one.
Okay. And we will put those in the podcast notes in the description of the video. Great. So, well, thank you, Pastor Mike. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And again, if you haven't done it yet, run over to YouTube, jump in the comments of this video, and put in the chat or in the comments what car Pastor Mike is. But then more importantly than that, let's make sure we do our next step for the week and go through those 5 habits because again, we always say it's a great next step joining us to the Grow Podcast, but if we just listen to it and learn something new and never put it into practice in our life, we're not really growing. So we love you, New Hope family. We're so glad that you're here. While you're over on YouTube leaving that awesome comment about what kind of car Pastor Mike is, make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet. You can like the video, or you can leave us a comment and let us know, something you'd like us to talk about or whatever it is.
And I know you may be saying, what's the point? Pastor Mike is stepping away. We have plans for the Grow Podcast.
Yes.
It will continue. We'll talk about those in the coming
and
weeks.
It won't just be, let's very importantly clarify, it's not just going to be me sitting here every week. So keep joining us.
It will actually be good.
Yeah.
No, that was mean.
It was accurate, though. All right. Thank you again, Pastor Mike. Thanks to all of you. We will see you next time.